Good evening. I would like to call to order our October 20th Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance as well as those watching home or streaming online. We would also like to welcome Directors Hendricks, Richardson, Webb, Fortson, and Vice Mayor Wyrick, who are participating with us via video conferencing. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Director Hendricks?
Present.
Director Richardson?
Here.
Director Webb?
Here.
Director Peck?
Here.
Director Hines?
Present.
Director Wright?
Here.
Director Compuris? Director Fortson?
Here.
Director Adcock?
Present.
Vice Mayor Wyrick?
Present.
Mayor Scott?
Present. Let me now recognize Director Irma Hendricks, who will give our invocation. Director Hendricks?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you?
Yes, ma'am.
If we would bow, my prayer, as always, is that the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in God's sight. Amen.
Amen. Hey, y'all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to set November 2nd, 2020 as the date of public hearing on the request to abandon portions of Vernon Estates Drive, Cameron Street, and the James M. Henson Drive rights-of-way located east of Chico Road and south of Baseline Road in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution to set November 2nd, 2020 as the date of hearing on the request to abandon portions of the 15-foot wide alley right-of-way located within Block 16, Hillcrest Addition, adjacent to 1117 Rose Street in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution to set November 2nd, 2020 as the date of public hearing on the request to abandon several easements within the Vernon Place Addition, Wallace Baseline Acres Addition, and Brimson's replat located generally north of Vernon Estates Drive and east of Chico Road in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Redstone Construction Group in an amount not to exceed $405,255.48 for the Catillus Road and Forest Lane Improvement Project and for the purposes. Funding from the 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Harris Management Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $141,344.40 for the Ward 2 sidewalk project and for the purposes. Funding from the 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Escamilla Excavating LLC in an amount not to exceed $243,382.80 for the Yarberry Lane Improvement Project and for the purposes. Funding from the 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Redstone Construction Group in an amount not to exceed $2,419,732.55 for the Pratt Rimmel Road Extension Project and for other purposes. Funding from the 3/8 capital improvement sales tax. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Central Arkansas Mitigation Bank LLC in an amount not to exceed $55,579.75 for stream and wetland mitigation credits for the Pratt Rimmel Road Improvement Project and for other purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Enterprise FM Trust Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $244,171 to purchase 48 vehicles for the Little Rock Police Department and for the purposes. To lease 48 vehicles for the Little Rock Police Department. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a fourth extension of the contract with VSP in an amount not to exceed $135,000 for group vision and insurance for the period beginning January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute any documents required to transfer the title of two properties between the city of Little Rock, Arkansas and Haybar Properties LLC and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Motorola Solutions Incorporated in amount not to exceed $130,000 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of 25 mobile radios for the Little Rock Police Department utilizing the Arkansas State Contract Purchasing Agreement and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Motorola Solutions in an amount not to exceed $150,000 for the purchase of 25 WatchGuard cameras and accessories for the Little Rock Police Department utilizing the Arkansas State Contract Purchasing Agreement. A resolution to request that the state of Arkansas provide $3 million in CARES Act funds to the city of Little Rock to assist the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Delta Dental Insurance in an amount not to exceed $650,000 for group dental insurance for a period beginning January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021 and for other purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda.
There's a motion and second. Before we call the vote, we have Directors Richardson, Director Peck, and we do have one agenda item. Director Richardson and Director Peck. Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question, Mr. Moore.
1 second, Director Richardson. Mr. Michael, can we turn up the volume for the TV? We can hear the directors via video conferencing, but if we can turn it up just a little bit. My apologies, Director Richardson. You please proceed.
That's okay, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your acknowledgement. One quick question, Mr. Moore. On the sidewalk project in Ward 2, are we utilizing any of our reentry participants? And if so, how many?
Director Richardson, we're not. Remember, we have two sort of concurrent programs going on. The sidewalk reentry program is going on currently, has been for the last number of years. But in order to get these projects done, we did decide, and we have done this for the last 4 or 5 years, to go ahead and contract some of these projects. So again, the reentry program mainly focuses in wards 1 and 2, and this is in Ward 2. But in order to get everything done within the 10-year time frame, we do have to contract some of it out.
Thank you, Bruce. So in the reentry program, for the most part, utilizing public works staff to supervise those young individuals?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Director Peck?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to hold item 14 separate.
Yes, ma'am. We have one agenda item card. Ms. Gretchen Hall.
Hasn't been seconded.
Second.
We already had a first,
Yeah,
Reading.
reading.
it's on the consent agenda.
It's on consent agenda.
How can you hold it separate after that?
Yeah, I
You
guess.
haven't voted. You couldn't after you voted.
Just make sure that's clear, Mr. Carpenter. Can you state for everyone that?
Mayor, what I would suggest is that you vote on the consent, you vote on whether or not to keep number 14 separate. If you do, then you go and vote on the consent agenda. And then we could
I
take
just
the
want to
comment.
make sure it's clear because we had a motion and a second initially. Then Director Peck asked for 14 to be pulled.
Which is an amendment to the motion to approve the
That has to
consent
be voted
agenda.
on. Okay.
Right, that has to be voted on.
But we'll go to that vote here shortly. Gretchen, Director Hall, Mrs. Hall.
You want me to go ahead and speak on
Yeah.
behalf of item 14? All right, so.
Well, I guess actually, I'm sorry. Let's do the vote on that
Okay.
first.
That's why I was asking. Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor?
There's Director Peck has called for a vote on pulling item 14. Is there a motion and a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Item 14 has been pulled to go separate. We'll now have a motion to do the consent agenda minus item number 14. All those in favor, please
That's
say.
already on the board. That vote just did that. That,
So we don't have to vote again.
her motion amended Director Adcock's motion.
Thank you
not-
so much, Mr. Parliamentarian. I think he just said we just voted on the consent agenda with that amendment.
Okay, we
Without
did?
14.
Okay.
All right, now we have item 14 that is being held.
No,
I think you still have to vote on
You've
the
got to vote
consent
on the
agenda.
consent agenda, and then you have
There-
item 14.
Is there a motion and a second?
That's been made.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. We're now separate from item number 14. Ms. Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City.
Sorry for the confusion of
No.
parliamentary procedure.
No worries, no worries. I appreciate your time tonight. I was asked by a couple of directors to come and provide a little bit of context for the proposed resolution, which I believe is item number 14 on your agenda. And so I did create just a couple of bullet points that I provided to Directors Peck and Directors Fortson, and I don't know if they have those to share with you, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things again to provide a little bit of context. Many talk about travel and tourism being Arkansas's #2 economic industry, and continually on an annual basis, Little Rock and Pulaski County creates approximately 25% of our state's total travel and tourism spending. A couple of highlights from 2019, our annual report include $1.8 billion in travel spending was generated in Pulaski County. We at the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau manage a lot of the public facilities that you own, and we operate on your behalf, and that includes the facility you're in, which is Robinson Center, also the State House Convention Center, and the First Security Amphitheater, and some facilities in the River Market and parking facilities adjacent to these that I mentioned. In 2019, we hosted 542 events in those facilities. We welcomed over 620 event attendees from out of town in those facilities, and our sales team, the efforts of our sales team secured 374 future meetings and events to come to town. It's no secret that the impact of COVID has been extremely detrimental to the travel and tourism industry, and of course to the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau as well. Since March the 12th, we have experienced over 239 event cancellations, and those began immediately on March the 12th, and they have spanned until the year of 2022, and so it goes well beyond this calendar year on those event cancellations. We have 38 events that are still on our postponed list that we were hoping to be able to actualize that business into future years through the rebooking process. Of course, we've cut millions in variable expenses within our own budgets. We've deferred over $2 million in capital improvements. We unfortunately had to reduce our staff permanently by 30%. We still have an additional 10% of our staff that remain on full or partial furlough, and our estimated estimated revenue reduction in 2020 is about $7 million. So we have tried to do everything that we can to mitigate these expected and anticipated losses through COVID-19. I am pleased to say that the State CARES Act did pass, and the Arkansas Legislative Council passed a $50 million appropriation for a lot of the businesses in our industry on the private sector side. That's going to provide tremendous support for them. We're working with all of our partners to make sure they are aware of that program and the eligibility for that program. Unfortunately, through this entire time, industries or organizations like LRCVB, because we are a governmental and public agency, we have not been eligible for any of the funding and relief programs at the federal or the state level. And so we looked at that $50 million plan, again, for the hospitality and business sector, and Mr. Fortson asked me to take a look at the eligible expenses within that program and determine what expenses LRCVB would have that would match up with those eligible expenses. And a couple of them are noted here, including our payroll, our utility cost for the facilities, our facility maintenance contracts, our annual debt service for not only this facility but also the Arkansas Arts Center, and then various other items including PPE, telephone and internet service, vehicle insurance, and technology cost necessary to shift some of our operations into the virtual environment. So that just provides a little bit of context for item number 14, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Director Fortson.
I think Gretchen has an excellent explanation of the past needs. One other point I would like to make is this $50 billion will be apportioned among several various private entities, but we as a Convention Bureau are not eligible for that. Suggestion has been made that we look to the city of Little Rock to provide for this shortfall. As this board knows, the Convention Bureau has been self-sustaining. We do not rely on the city for it, and consequently, our income is based on activities that the Convention Bureau sponsors. The 228 meetings that canceled had a strong economic impact in this town, and those people will be coming back at some point in time, but it's urgent that we recommission our marketing team, because that is where decisions are made. I can tell you that this last week, our scaled marketing team secured a 600 convention for 2022, and we need to start now on that, because once COVID has been defeated, or at least harnessed, and we won't find this faucet turned back on immediately. So consequently, we need to be making sales now to get people to come to Little Rock in the future, and that's why we're requesting this money from the state. We expect it to be potentially available from two sources. One, any residue left over from this first round of appropriations, and then it appears likely that some time there will be an additional round of funding in CARES Act, and we want this need to be in front of those decision makers when that decision is made.
Thank you, Director Fortson. Director Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gretchen, thanks for that, and thanks, Gene, for your service on the A&P Commission. Just want to reiterate what Mr. Fortson was talking about, how important it was to have meetings and conventions in the pipeline. So many entities plan years out, and we just can't afford to be behind. The economic impact that the tourism industry has for Little Rock and our county is it's pretty amazing. We in our industry call it heads and beds and butts and seats. And we love those temporary taxpayers who come to Little Rock, enjoy our amenities, eat in our restaurants, stay in our hotels, and shop in our stores. So the sales team, we need this so we can be healthy in 2022 and beyond. Thanks, Gretchen.
Director Hines.
Thank you. And Mayor, this may be a question for Sarah, but I've gotten a question over the weekend that I just wanted to answer. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to it, but since the federal guidelines have changed and allow us to apply for budgeted public safety expenses in the CARES Act, some people are saying that we've got a $3 million unexpected windfall, but I was wondering if Sarah could tell us why that's not the case.
Yes. Director Linehan. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Good evening. In response to your question, Director Hines, later this evening I'll be showing you the budget amendment for the revenue portion. The city is expecting the general fund revenues to decrease a little over $8 million associated with COVID. The budget reduction that we did that reduced expenditures by $5 million helps to offset that. The reimbursement we're going to have for public safety will help to offset that, but we've also incurred about $4.5 million of other COVID-related expenses. So we're just trying to get to where our budget is balanced, but we do not have the capacity to also fund the Convention Bureau with the funds that are available.
What you're saying is if we are able to capture the whole $7.6 million we're eligible from the state, that we're projecting an extra basically $4 million over and above $3 to $4 million over and above our $5 million budget adjustment, and therefore that's going to eat up any of the extra funds that we're able to claim through budgeted public safety, correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
All right, that's what I needed answered. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions from board members,
Mr. Mayor, I would move resolution.
Second.
there's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, would you read the group items for the first time?
An ordinance to establish the rate of taxation of property for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to be collected in the year 2021 for various funds of the City of Little Rock, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the National League of Cities Institute in amount not to exceed $38,486 to provide training and technical assistance to build capacity to identify racial disparities and address issues through policy and practice, and for the purposes. An ordinance to authorize the issuance and sale of water reclamation refunding revenue bonds, to provide for the payment of the principal and interest of the bonds, to prescribe other matters related thereto, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 19,769 of August the 7th, 2007, to authorize a revised payment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2007B, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 20,074 of April 20th, 2009, to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2009A, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 20,711 of May 8th, 2013, to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2013, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,258 of August the 12th, 2016, to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2016, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,553 of April the 4th, 2018, to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2018, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,699 of April the 2nd, 2019, to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2019, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to establish a rate of taxation of property for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to be collected in the year 2021 for various funds of the City of Little Rock, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the National League of Cities to institute an amount not to exceed $38,486 to provide training and technical assistance to build capacity to identify racial disparities and address issues through policy and practice. An ordinance to authorize the issuance and sale of water reclamation refunding revenue bonds, to provide for the payment of the principal and interest of the bonds, to prescribe other matters related thereto, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 19,769, to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2007B, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 20,074, to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2009A, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 20,711, to authorize a revised payment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2013, to prescribe other matters relating thereto and for other purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,258 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2016, to prescribe other matters relating thereto and for the purposes. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,553 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2018, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,699 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2019, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to establish the rate of taxation of property for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to be collected in the year 2021 for various funds of the City of Little Rock, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the National League of Cities Institute in amount not to exceed $38,486 to provide training and technical assistance to build capacity to identify racial disparities and address issues through policy and practice. An ordinance to authorize the issuance and sale of water reclamation refunding revenue bonds, to provide for the payment of the principal and interest of the bonds, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 19,769 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2007B, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 20,074 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2009A, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 20,711 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2013, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,258 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2016, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,553 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2018, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,699 to authorize a revised repayment schedule and interest rate for the outstanding City of Little Rock, Arkansas sewer revenue bond, Series 2019, to prescribe other matters relating thereto. Third and final reading.
We've had 3 readings. Director Adcock, I think you have a question or
Yes.
comment?
By the suggestion of the city attorney, I would like to state I do have some City of Little Rock revenue bonds, but none of them are in this series.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that information. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
Emergency clause 18.
16 and 18.
16 and 18, you have emergency clauses.
A motion and a second for emergency clause.
Second. So move.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
18.
Motion and second for item 18's emergency clause.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. I'm now going to open a public hearing for item number 25. Madam Clerk, would you read the ordinance for the first time?
An ordinance to authorize the construction and betterments and improvements to the water reclamation system of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to authorize the issuance of water reclamation system revenue bonds, Series 2020C, for the purpose of financing the cost thereof, to provide for the payment and interest of the bond, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for other purposes. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to authorize the construction of betterments and improvements to the water reclamation system of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to authorize the issuance of a water reclamation system revenue bond, Series 2020C, for the purpose of financing the cost thereof, to provide for the payment and interest of the bond, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for other purposes. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. We've now had 3 readings. Are there
That's
any?
only the second reading.
Oh, third reading, sorry.
An ordinance to authorize the construction of betterments and improvements to the water reclamation system of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to authorize the issuance of a water reclamation system revenue bond, Series 2020C, for the purpose of financing the cost thereof, to provide for the payment and interest of the bond, to prescribe other matters relating thereto, and for the purposes. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. Are there any questions or anyone speak for or against? Any questions, speak for or against? Any questions, speak for or against? We're now going to consider this public hearing to be closed. Is there, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. We are now going to enter into citizens' communication. Mr. Johnny Hassan. Mr. Johnny Hassan.
Thank you. Peace be upon you, to the board, to the city, and to those who have this job of running the city of Little Rock. Thank you for your time and patience. There's a document that I've provided for the mayor and also for Bruce Moore, since he's the city manager. What I put on there was the reference to ordinance 2156. My complaint about this particular ordinance is, some of you may know, March 20th, 2018, Director Irma Hendricks put a particular site on the abatement list or to be destroyed. My question and my point to you is what the abatement law says: dangerous, obvious, detrimental to public welfare. Also says dangerous to lives, limb, and property of people in the vicinity and those lawful passing by. And that can be declared a nuisance. My question to you and the city board, please document, if you have any documentation that this particular building has been, people have been arrested, people have been killed, people have been assaulted in that area, on that property, and so forth. If you have that documented, please present it to the board for anybody to see. On the point of the use of that particular document, the only reason that that particular property is on private, because Arthur Blood wants that building destroyed so he can have a parking lot, extend his parking lot. And Mrs. Hendricks is one of his funders. He paid for her funding his campaign last year. Now, my issue, you have a document that says 1908 and 1910 Pulaski. If what I just read about the document that says detrimental, dangerous, obvious, or Plymouth, I have, according to your city housing director, says that information should be collected on the illegal activity, suspect, and description of clothing, age, and suspicious activity, including vehicles and models and makes of building and color. I have provided you over 50 license tags that's been going in those drug houses for the last 10 years. Now, the documents that I have is not from 10 years, it's from last year and this year. I've reported these license tags to your...
Mr. Hassan?
Yes.
Your time is concluded. there's 3 minutes for each citizen's communication.
Okay, well, my point is, I provided you documents that says those particular vehicles, and also gave you
Mr. Hassan, we got to go to the
Yeah.
next person. Ms. Jeffries? Thank you so much, Mr. Hassan, and peace be unto you.
My name is Belinda Jeffries, and I'm owner of the Murphy Jeffries Building on 2901 Martin Luther King Drive, which has been accepted for a bid for demolition. I was told that if I could come up with some type of letter of intent or some type of foundation of monies that could salvage the building, or someone who can help me to get things done for the building immediately, that you may take it off the list. And I'm trying to let you know that an offer has come through, and I would like to be given at least 3 or 4 days time to allow them to do their negotiated plans on the offer. This person he's come forth. He possesses complete financial ability to purchase the Murphy Jeffries Building with financial tools and supplies of immediate restoration capabilities now. He has that. And his goals are the same as ours, as to advance fundamental freedoms in the South End community of Little Rock, create a safe and secure community, creating a business incubator for small nonprofit entrepreneurs, and provide a meeting place for community groups and advocates, creating an internet cafe for the community, and to maintain and preserve the historic Murphy Jeffries Building. He has the monies, he has the vision, he has the plan, and could you hold off on knocking the building down until we get this to you? It could be done within 2 weeks. I'm asking for mercy for the Murphy Jeffries Building.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jeffries, for your communication. Mrs. Jeffries, Mrs. Terry Jeffries.
Board members, I am basically copying what my sister Belinda Jeffries is saying. We do have a buyer for that building, and what I am asking of you as board members to please keep the building up, because we don't need another vacant property in the community. It is, when things are vacant like that, everything is all weeds, and we'd like to get something and let it stay as a historical portion of the central part of Little Rock. That building deserves to stay up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jeffries. Carrie Hodges. Mrs. Carrie Hodges.
Well, thank you, Board of Directors and Mayor Scott, for these minutes to make a request. My name is Carrie Hodge. I live in a large neighborhood area that is bordered to the east by Bowman Road and to the north by Canis Road. My neighborhood has come alive in the last year. Probably the only silver lining, or one of the few, with what we're recently in, is that everyone's seeking to be outside. Runners, walkers, moms and dads with strollers, kids on their bikes, seniors getting their walks. It's really fantastic to see so many of my neighbors in this area come outside and be together, spread apart. But this large and diverse neighborhood of over 400 homes has no neighborhood park. I've been there for 2 years, and I believe our neighborhood needs a park, a destination, a place to play, to connect, a place for kids to get to know kids who don't go to the same school with them, but they can be nearby friends. The good news is there is a place. Right where Gamble Road meets Canis are two lots. They're flat, there's a wooded area, there's a large established tree in a cleared area. You'll know if you've passed it or you've seen it, if you've driven down Canis Road and you pass the VW Hall with the mounted helicopter. That's the opposite corner from this empty lot. All it needs now is to make it a park, and that's why I'm here, to request the City of Little Rock join our neighborhood to build a park. I'm happy to be a personal connection between the city and our area, and my contact information is on the paperwork that was passed out. Look forward to discussing this with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Patricia Blick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Board of Directors. My name is Patricia Blick. I'm the Executive Director of the Quapaw Quarter Association. Our mission is preserving Greater Little Rock's historic places. I have sent some previous correspondence, but I'd just like to reinforce that the QQA continues to oppose demolition of the Murphy Jeffries building, and there is strong and broad support to save it. In order to gauge this support, we did an online petition. We started it October 2nd. When I sent my initial communications to you, within a week, we had over 1,200 signatures wanting to save the building. As of today, it's about 1,600 signatures. There's a question about the significance of the property. It has been very well documented. It is on the Arkansas Register of Historic Places. In that documentation, there's discussion about the original development of the building, but there's also discussion about two significant African-American owners and occupants of the building, Mr. Andrew Jeffries and Mr. Christopher Mercer. And that is part of the reason that it is on the Arkansas Register. The reason it is not on the National Register is because it needs some modifications to return it to its original state. Again, we respectfully request that the removal of the Murphy Jeffries building from the demolition be given consideration at the next City Board of Directors meeting. We understand that typically if a property owner requests reconsideration, it is granted, but for whatever reason, it is not being granted in this case. I was pleased to learn from Belinda and Terry Jeffries this evening, or earlier today even, that there is sincere interest in rehabilitation of the property. As I think you know, we are opposed to demolition of historic properties, and we are considering it quite baffling that the city would consider demolishing an African-American associated property, because we have lost so many over the years. Thank you very much for considering this request.
We'll now move to item number 26.
Mayor, we had one citizen communication online.
Yes, please state the name of that citizen's communication.
I received an email correspondence from Luke Scrable.
Mayor, there was an email communication from Mr. Scrable. The purpose of citizen communication is to bring matters before the board that are not otherwise on an agenda. Mr. Scrable's communication is in terms of the election and candidates that he thinks should not be voted for. That's really not an issue that will come before the board. That comes before the people, and therefore I don't think it's proper for citizen communication.
Thank you so much.
Mayor,
Director Wright.
before we move to the next item, what would be the procedure to remove the Murphy's Jeffrey building from the demolition list?
The only way for to remove it from the demolition list is for a member of the city board is to place an amendment to the ordinance that was passed in March of 2018 that put it on the demolition list. And so a member of the city board would have to do that. That was brought before the city board this past summer, but it was removed from the agenda through the adherence of the city board. And so another member of the city board could put it back on the agenda and an ordinance to remove from the demolition list, but would need to be another vote, just like it would need to be a vote to amend the 2018 vote.
I would like to take that offer, to make that amendment, to put it back on as an amendment.
An ordinance to repeal the 2018 ordinance.
Yes.
Mr. Moore and I will work on the upcoming city board meeting.
And this is, will someone make contact with the Jeffries family to get the information that they have so that the board will be assured?
I think first we have to draft an ordinance and go through that process, but once the ordinance, and then it has to be added to the agenda, then voted, to be added to the agenda and then have a vote. So there is a process. It's just,
I just wanted them to understand that it won't be on the next agenda, right?
it depended on the timing of the city attorney's office, but we'll work on it.
I'd like to do that, to get it on the next agenda so that we can discuss it, and then perhaps we'll have that information from them to the city manager.
Mr. Carpenter, and again, as the mayor said, it was on earlier this summer, but just so we can be consistent, because this will come up down the line, based on the board rules, when should the request was made today, based on the current board rules, when should that item come before the board?
2 weeks?
Well, it would be discussed at the agenda meeting after next week's.
Right.
Unless you bring it forward, which you have the right to do, in which case it can be on the next agenda.
Okay, I just wanted to be,
Point of order, Mayor. Tom, could we also not take a vote by 8 votes at it without that delay as per our ordinance or our resolution? If I recall, in order to add it with no vote of the board.
It would take a unanimous, it would take a 3/4 vote of the board, I think.
That's,
I
okay.
get that one confused with unanimous or 3/4. I think it's 3/4.
3/4, I thought it was 8 votes, that's what I thought.
So we will be put back on the agenda.
Mr. Moore?
Based on you all's rules, it would be on the agenda meeting on the 10th.
November.
Correct.
November, December.
November the 10th. But also, and I think the mayor and I will be on the same page on this, we would alert the successful contractor to not move forward until the board has
Taking this action.
deliberated.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now move forward to item number, is that Director Hendricks? Are you?
I just wanted to say that it's quite interesting that Director Wright is speaking about something that's not in the area, but just proceeding with that. You know, I work through, I don't deal with ups and downs of things, okay? So you better look who you're with. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Emily Cox.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. Director Hines' question from earlier got to touched on this issue, but last week I shared an update with you on the CARES Act and our allocation from the state, which is $7.6 million, and the categories of allowable expenses, and then all the projects that we have been engaging in to date. And over the course of all this, we've had continued conversations with the Municipal League, the state and its vendor, and with our municipal counterparts across the state. And based on all those conversations and all we've learned about the application process and timeline considerations and allowable expenses, and how best to ensure that we do, in fact, receive our full allocation, we have submitted our application for reimbursement of public health and safety salaries. And so I shared with you last week that we also have no shortage of eligible costs that we could have submitted for our allocation. And we have incurred expenses that are specific to the pandemic that were not in our 2020 budget. And so just to remind you of those items that I touched on last week, there are technology upgrades for employees to telework and also for us to have virtual meetings like this one, reconfiguring existing office space for people to allow for social distancing among our employees, Also, upfitting HVAC systems to include ionization and UV lighting for air quality purposes in city facilities. We've also deep cleaned city facilities to decrease the spread of COVID-19 among folks. And we also have our 25% match for FEMA costs, and also workers' comp and our unemployment insurance costs are above budget as well as a result of the pandemic. And then we've improved broadband capability in targeted public spaces, including community centers and some park pavilions. And we have purchased hotspots for K-12 students as well. And we have supported feeding program and our homeless providers. And also we're pursuing alternative response vehicles for the fire department. And there are other expenses that have traditionally been eligible under FEMA that may not be eligible under FEMA. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. And of course, we've had our public health communications efforts too. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, we have about $4.5 million in expenses so far, and the pandemic is not over. So so now I'd like to turn it over to Sarah so she can present the broader budget picture as well.
Director Linehan, who will now give our 2020 budget amendment update from a general fund revenue adjustments. And as Director Linehan is coming, as I shared with the board a couple of weeks ago, each week we will be giving a budget update as we've shared from a COVID-19 financial impact. We're giving today the 2020 budget amendment. As you know, we had the last amendment that we had to the 2020 budget was in April as we got prepared for COVID-19. We still are navigating through COVID-19. There will be a budget amendment for the 2020 year, which we're currently in, which you passed in 2019, and we are almost complete with preparing the budget for 2021. Next week, this week you'll have the revenue forecast and adjustments for this week. Next week we will share the 2020 budget expenditures to the budget amendment, which will reconcile together to show a true budget 2020 amendment to be balanced due to COVID-19 as we continue to navigate through that perspective. And then shortly thereafter, we will then present the 2021 budget and then go through that process and walk through that budget and the decisions being made as a result of COVID-19 as we navigate through it as well for the 2021 year with a hopeful passing of the budget as soon as possible after it is presented. Also want to share in that process, just really want to take time to recognize Director Linehan, her entire finance team, and all the department directors who have been very flexible and nimble throughout COVID-19 as we have been navigating through one would call uncharted waters, but we are doing a good job of being good fiscal stewards and making swift decisions, but also flexible decisions in the midst of all of this. So, Director Linehan.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, as the mayor said, we're going to talk about the revenue impact of the coronavirus primarily, but other revenue adjustments as well that will be part of our budget amendment. Normally, when I present a budget amendment to you, we do it all at once, but there's so many different components to this that we wanted to go through the revenues today. Then we'll go through the remainder of the budget amendment next week at the agenda meeting for your action on November 2nd. And that will set us up well then in order to be able to look at the trends as we're building our revenues for the 2021 budget. As I mentioned last week, the guidance that we've received from an economic perspective tells us that it's going to be after 2022 before we resume to within approximately 1% of our 2019 revenues. So as we start, on the next slide, Allie, start. So just a reminder that the original 2020 adopted budget for the general fund revenue was $212,125,253. The amended budget forecast that I'm about to show you is $204,039,253, which is a net reduction to revenues in the general fund of $8,086,000, Most of that is due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. And then I've already told you about the budget amendment. So I'm going to go through the primary financial lines one at a time. And Allie, if you'll go to the next slide. The first slide is with respect to our property taxes. As I've told you, property taxes are assessed in 1 year for collection in the following year. So the taxes that we're collecting this year were actually assessed last year. The original charge that we received from the county and our adopted budget both anticipated a 4% increase. We are tracking consistent with our prior year revenue, slightly ahead, but we're about 1% below budget. And so we are, this reduction of $325,950 represents approximately 1% reduction. I've separated the pension property tax line on this just to show you that that's the portion of the property tax revenue that is dedicated to the closed police and fire pension funds. And so any variances there are passed direct through in our contribution to that fund. On the next slide, we'll talk about our sales tax revenues. As we've discussed in our financial presentations to date, the first half of the year, our revenues held or were slightly above where we were the same period a year ago. We would have anticipated that, given that last year, the first half of the year did not include internet sales tax revenue. Second half of the year does. So while COVID-19 has had a significantly negative impact on sales tax revenues, particularly from restaurants, bars, categories associated with tourism and hospitality, because we were comparing to that prior year period that did not include internet sales tax, we were staying even or slightly ahead. The county actually was performing better than the city, and that's due to a couple of things. One, when the coronavirus pandemic hit, a lot of the residents that live and work around Little Rock are used to frequenting our restaurants, our bars, the facilities in Little Rock. Now, communities like Sherwood, Jacksonville, some of the nearby small towns, their sales tax has actually grown between 15 to 25% during the pandemic because people are staying home. They're shopping at their grocery stores in town rather than eating out. In addition, due to the internet sales, they're experiencing quite a bit of growth. So a lot of that shopping has been lost to Little Rock. Given that it's still inside the county, we are receiving a share of that revenue, and so the county taxes are up. The other thing is that there's a lot of construction activity, economic activity going on at the port, and that construction has helped the county boost the sales tax revenue. I talked to you in a recent report on the amount of steel and building services that were high growth categories for the county. So the county has, year to date, their sales tax growth through the end of July was 3.21%, which was that much above budget, and 2.85% above the same period a year ago. We are now forecasting for the remainder of the year, where we'll be in comparison to the period that did include internet sales tax, that the counties will decrease probably 1% the remainder of the year. We think the city sales tax, which was really basically even through the end of July at a 0.59% decrease, we're anticipating that it will decline 3.5% compared to the same period a year ago. That number is an average of what we've seen in the last 3 months, with July being down 3.5%. We had a decrease in April, a significant decrease there, but we've held steady in other months. We will not receive our August sales tax revenue until later, the end of this week or the first of next week, but we're planning on approximately 3.5% decline for the remainder of the year. So all in, the end result, after being slightly ahead through the first 6 months, is a 1% overall decline of $873,000. On the next slide, licenses and permits. Our business licenses are traditionally collected in the first few months of the year, and then we'll have some additional collections throughout the year with startup businesses or turnover and activity. Because those licenses were collected at the beginning of the year, that revenue source has held very steady. We have got a very slight reduction forecasted in for businesses that may be closing. The mixed drink license line is the one that has been significantly impacted by the coronavirus. There's been a 35% decline forecast. It was actually much higher than that during the heaviest months of the coronavirus, and that's due to the closure of restaurants and bars for that period of time, and now the measured reopening with restrictions on capacity. We're still seeing a significant reduction in that revenue category. Buildings and related permits was forecast to increase in 2020 over 2019. We are forecasting that it'll be slightly lower than the 2019 revenues. We have continued to see strong economic development, but there have been some construction delays, and so those permits are trailing forecast. So combined, the different components of this revenue category will be down 10.2%, and again, driven primarily by the mixed drink licenses. On the next slide, the intergovernmental pension turnback revenues, these are received annually from the state in July. So this one is easy to forecast. We know what the actuals are. Pension turnbacks, it's tied primarily to the public safety cost. So as the expense, the cost of our police and fire increases, the turnback increases. It's intended to offset approximately 40% of the pension costs for LOPFI for the active police and fire. And then the second line is our closed plans where we've merged administration with LOPFI. And there's turnback funds that are dedicated to those as well. Those do not increase at the rate that the others do because all of the members of the closed plan are retired. And so as the membership decreases, the turnback funds begin to decrease as well. So that $476,977 increase is known. $48,000 of that will pass through directly to those closed pension plans. The next category, charges for services, is one of the hardest hit due to the coronavirus pandemic. All park and tourism related activities have seen significant declines. In addition, our school resource officer reimbursement, because the schools were closed, that's declining $514,000 for the current year. The one line item, well, I guess two, that are increasing. Airport reimbursement is increasing slightly just due to the increased cost of the police and fire representatives that are at the airport. The salary reimbursement for 911, there was a legislative change in the last legislature that increased 911 fees. That was estimated at first to increase fees by about 60%, but it's actually doubled the 911 fees revenue. So you can see in 2019, we had $550,000 left over after paying maintenance for the system that could help offset 911 salaries. We increased the original 2020 budget to $800,000, but we're now seeing that we can raise that to $1 million. So, but all of our activities associated with parks have decreased. In total, this category is down 33%. We have seen improvement in our zoo revenues. Our golf revenues are almost back to normal, if not exceeding same period a year ago with the outdoor activity. Zoo is still slower than the past, but it is improving after being shut down really from the period from March to June. On the next slide, our fines and fee revenue. This category is also down. In total, it's the forecast is a 41% decline. The courts all closed during March at the initial outbreak of the pandemic. They've just resumed operations. Some are still only having remote activities. But the fines for general fines, parking fines, obviously there were no parkers downtown. There was no parking enforcement during the worst part of the pandemic, or the initial part of the pandemic. The uniform filing fees associated with courts, and then also animal services fees. All of these are down, and the forecast is $961,000 decrease, or 41%. The next slide is our franchise fees. These have some relationship to the coronavirus, but there are other factors that are driving the more significant variances here. With our electric and gas franchise fees, the very mild weather that we had in January and February when it was normally very, very cold, and then we also had a relatively mild summer. Those decreased the utility cost for both electric and gas franchise fees. I think in my last presentation that I provided, the energy fees alone were down compared to their original forecast by almost $600,000 just year to date through July. In March, they told us that they had filed an adjustment with the Public Service Commission to reduce the energy cost rider. That was expected to reduce the cost by 3 to 7% beginning in April and will run through next year at the end of March. That will decrease their fees by their franchise fees by another $500,000. Water reclamation has also experienced a decline, and that's primarily related to the temporary restaurant and business closures. The water utility is up from our original forecast, which was low in comparison to the same period a year ago, but it is still down in comparison to 2019. All in, this source is expected to be $1,490,000 below the adopted budget, which is a decline of about 5%. And then on the next slide, we have some other revenues, our miscellaneous revenue category. And this includes contributions from LRCVB to help run the river market. It also included their contribution for debt service in 2019 that did not continue on to 2020 and 2021 because the debt has been retired. This category also includes like workers' comp rebates or payments for excess workers' comp. It's anticipated to be $153,000 above what our original budget was, and investment income is anticipated to decline. And that's partly due to the reduced interest rates during this time, but it's also due to increased expenditures for things that will ultimately be reimbursed by grants, but it drives down our cash balances in the bank at the time. So on the next slide, all of these changes have been reported. This is in previous categories. So the sales tax was in the sales tax adjustment, the pension tax, property tax, the turnback funds, and so on. But this is the portion of those revenues that's dedicated to that the closed pension, police, and fire plans. So $14.5 million of our original budget, those are budgeted to come in and be passed through directly to those closed plans. The total decrease in those revenues is $156,000, and that will be offset by a reduction to the expenses. So the net impact to the city for this piece is a wash. So the next slide is just a summary of all of the lines that we've just gone through. And you can see that the total is $8,086,000 decline, which is approximately a 4% reduction in the general fund budget. So on the last slide, just a reminder that we will present the expenditure side. As Emily just told you, we've got another $4.5 million worth of expenditures that are COVID related. What we'll see on the expenditure slide too will include that reduction to fire salaries associated with the COVID reimbursement for public safety. We chose fire because that is directly related to COVID every day. Their EMTs, these are just the EMTs that we submitted reimbursement for, so all of their calls are potential COVID exposures. So the way that the grant funds work, they come into the grant fund, so the reimbursement will come to the grant fund. These expenditures will be reclassified from fire salaries to the grant fund to directly offset that grant revenue. Then it's reported on the city's CFA at the end of the year, the grant reporting, where we track all of our funds restricted for grants. We do anticipate in the expenditure amendment that we will be transferring out of the general fund another $4.5 million to cover those expenditures that Emily mentioned. So that's where part of that reduction in salaries will help us to be able to cover those other $4.5 million in expenditures. And then also next week, I'll be talking to you about the other funds. It's not just the general fund that has an impact associated with COVID. So we'll be talking about the street fund, the fleet fund, vehicle storage, waste disposal, and our parking garage fund as well. Are there any questions?
We have Director Hines and Director Richardson.
Sarah, I got several questions. So when we did our budget adjustment, the $5.5 million, we only reduced expenses. We didn't project in. Did we do a revenue adjustment then? Or?
No, we did not. So
okay.
So we did it was not it was a little less than $5 million.
Okay. So I was okay. I had my number at 5.5, but I've slept since then. So if we've already made expense adjustments and now we're taking revenue adjustments, is the net the difference in those two numbers? Other than you said there's going to be some more expense reductions coming next week?
So if there had been no expenses associated with COVID other than the fire payroll, then we would have had a net of about 3.1 or 2 million, I think, after all these adjustments, a net gain. But the expenditures for the other COVID committed expenditures are about $4.5 million. So we're going to have some other expenditure reductions in our amendment in addition to the addition of the COVID related expenditures and the fire reduction.
Okay, so but those are all set by the care funds, correct?
Not all of them. The fire piece is.
Okay. All
But
right.
we will bring you a balanced budget amendment.
Right, okay, and I guess that I would have expected to see our expenses just on the top line revenues. And then on the page 4 where you talk about the bullet point, taxes from July, December are expected to be less favorable in comparison to prior year, and this is just COVID related, mainly on reduction.
It has to do with the fact that last year, beginning in July, the internet sales tax was included. So the first half of the year, there was not internet sales tax in the previous year.
When you say it was included, that's when they started levying it, but we didn't see those collections for 2 months after that, correct?
They started levying it beginning in July.
But
and
we
so
didn't
we
get
did
our-
begin collecting because we recognize our revenue in the period that it's earned, not when we receive it, which is why it takes a while to know what it is.
Right, which I totally disagree with that accounting principle, but that's, I guess, between Gatsby and us. Or you, let's see. Let me see. And then why weren't the 2020 actuals included with our revenue?
Because they're only a portion of the year, it'd be hard to tell where
Okay.
we stand.
All right, I just going through here with lots of questions because I don't have the expense reductions too.
And we'll have that whole picture next week.
Right. Any reason the water utility franchise fee is up when we're seeing water reclamation down?
As I mentioned on that slide, let me get to it. If you look back at the 2019, their actual revenues were $3,736,000. When we adopt the budget, we don't have all of our revenues in yet, and we had underestimated the 2020 revenue. And so we are still expecting a decline in comparison to 2019. We just underestimated our original budget.
Okay, all right. I think that's all the questions I've got for tonight. Hang on, let me see. I was just making notes as I was going through here. Okay, so you talk about on the very last page that the general fund adjustments will include reduction to fire salaries associated with care reimbursement transfers out to offset other unbudgeted COVID-19 expenditures. So when the feds changed their rules 2 or 3 weeks ago to allow us to claim public safety budgeted items, where does that come into play?
That's the reduction to the fire. The issue was up until 3 weeks ago, the only thing that was allowed was unbudgeted, things that were over your original budget, that were not included in your original budget. So we were acting on the guidance from the Fed from the very beginning, and they told us that we had to have the expenses completed. We had to claim between the period of March 1 and December 15. This rule change to be able to include the public safety salaries came September 21st, after we had already incurred a significant amount of other expenses. Initially, our plan was to seek reimbursement for those and then fill in the gap with the salaries. But the Municipal League and the state advised otherwise. They said that it would be cleaner, it would be easier, and they advised all municipalities to file the salaries first and then to use anything that created to offset the other expenditures that we had incurred.
Okay, thank you.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor.
Frank?
My question is for Emily. We can bring her back up, please. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, sir.
Emily, I think we talked about this briefly last week, and it's related to the CARES Act and a resolution I presented that was unsuccessful. I know that CDC has placed a moratorium on eviction for renters until the end of this year, and then that may go until the next year. Can you tell me how much you have available for the rental assistance program to the end of this year that the city has available?
We have ESG COVID grant. We have an ESG COVID grant that we received, and the exact amount for rental assistance, I cannot recall.
Is it $1 million, or does that sound right? Or close to $1 million, or a little bit over $1 million, $1 million, or less than $2 million?
I think, Director Richardson, somewhere between 700,000 and 900,000.
Somewhere between 700,000 and 100,000.
Yeah, and don't quote me on it, but we'll get with Director Howard and get that information to you. But I do think it will quickly be utilized because of the amount of rental assistance that's given to per person.
Correct. And man, I want to thank Tom and Kevin Howard for working through some of this and making sure it's available on our website so our citizens can see that information is out there and how to access that for their own support and service on behalf of the city. So thank you for that. I'll look it up some as well and see if for some reason I thought it was but that's 700 to 900,000.
We'll get that information to you as quickly as possible, and then also thank you for your leadership in pressing upon that and working with Director Howard and Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, sir.
Director Compuris.
Sarah, I hate to put you back on the spot. Either my hearing is getting worse, which my wife tells me all the time it is, or I just don't get what we're doing. And I'm not sure that a simple graft is a possible thing. But we're $8 million down in revenue, correct?
Yes.
Could you tell me, or could you get us a graph that shows with the CARE money, I don't care what fund it goes to. I mean, I think I'm past trying to argue that it goes in the middle fund or what it does. But just say, this much money's coming in, this much money's where we've saved in expenditures, and where we stand on our budget. Because when the paper reports this out tomorrow that our revenues are down $8 million, it doesn't take into account the CARE money and what we've cut in expenditures. So I'd like if you could, a simple explanation of where the money comes in, what it offsets, and what really our net deficit is for the year.
And you should have that Friday when the budget amendment is wrapped up and it goes out in your notification on Friday. We're still working on the other funds and the expenditures and balancing it all, but it will be ready by Friday.
Okay. And the second thing is, and this is at your leisure, would you break down property taxes that we're actually getting for 2020 by ward?
We do not have that information. We receive property taxes in one lump sum based on the mill levy we do not get any location information. We've tried before to get information from the county. It's it's time consuming and they don't have it broken down by ward.
Well, if you could try again to get us some rough estimate where the money's coming from, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Any more questions for the board before any final comments?
I can tell you one thing, Sarah, the Pulaski County GIS office can pull it by zip code because I had a study done with them on millage, just the school millage revenue for certain zip codes in West Little Rock to see how much they generated back to the county as a whole. So they do have that. They won't break it down by ward, but you can get it by zip code.
Okay.
They were very helpful. It didn't take their guy over there very long, but it's.
Would that be
what they'll do is
sufficient,
they'll get you the property values within those zip codes, and then you can apply the millage to it to kind of see what they generate. Kind of how we kind of backed into it a little bit.
Okay. Would that be sufficient for your request, Director?
Director Compuris?
Director Compuris.
Would that be sufficient to your request?
That's fine.
And just so board members understand the rationale, what we're doing through is we're walking through this journey of this budget process because normally we wouldn't have to do a budget amendment of this magnitude because we normally would not be in a global pandemic. And then also the diversity of having the online sales tax as well and how we compare to our numbers based on when it was levied. And so the best way to look at it is due to COVID-19, since the April budget amendment that we basically cut close to $5 million, most of which were fees for services due to the closing of several different operations. And as we navigate through COVID-19, we've basically seen a 4% reduction in our revenue. And since we have a 4% reduction in our revenue and understanding our cash flow system, we are able to navigate and make expense reductions to ensure that we have a balanced budget amendment. So let's understand that we got a 4% reduction in our revenues, plus we are grateful that we have the $7.6 million allotment because what that does is prevents us to balance the budget on the backs of our employees, which is essentially what would have had to happen as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic and not having the CARES Act. And since we have the CARES Act, we are able to utilize another $7.6 million, which leaves a net deficit of a little bit of $1 million, and we still have expense reductions. And also, when you understand that we have to do various different things with the FEMA reimbursement. So we are balanced. We're walking through this because many times people think that cities are cash flush, and that's not the case. We have to navigate and throughout this process just like the private sector does as well, and we've been able to do that. And so I want to give kudos to our Chief Financial Officer to ensure that we have a balanced budget amendment to present to you in the midst of a global pandemic. So thank you so much, Director Linehan.
I also wanted you to have a good look at the revenues for the amendment because they also lay the groundwork then for the 2021 budget. As we mentioned, we're not expecting revenues to return to 2019 levels till after 2022. So there will still be revenues in 2021's budget will be less than the $212 million we adopted initially in 2020.
And that's, again, what we learned from Stevens Incorporated and others, that we probably won't be back to pre-COVID-19 levels until 2022 or early 2023. That being said, meeting adjourned.